Good evening and welcome to our City Council regular meeting, starting at 5:30 on Monday, August the 3rd. Leslie, would you please call roll?
Yes, ma'am. Councilman Slater?
Here.
Councilman Abear?
Here.
Councilman Torgerson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Now?
Here.
And Mayor Fitch?
Here.
If you will please stand for the invocation and pledge. Bless those present, O Lord, that the business conducted here this evening will be for the continued betterment of our city, and in keeping all thy commandments, we ask in God's name. Amen.
Amen.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll look for approval of the minutes. The first step would be July 20th, our regular meeting minutes. Do we have any questions from the public?
I know we have not received any.
All right, council, do we have? Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from council? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And let me jump right back up to the beginning and read my paragraph here.
Oh.
Procedures.
I know. Forget the movie, we're just doing it live. All right, pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69 issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, as extended by Executive Order 20-179, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location. Instead, municipalities may use communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by Florida statutes for members of the council appearing remotely and for public participation. While a quorum of council members is physically present for this meeting, along with a minimal number of key staff, we are following the governor's emergency orders and the city's emergency declarations regarding COVID-19. I'd now like to ask the city attorney to explain the procedures for public comment and participation in this meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. On April 6, 2020, the City Council adopted these procedures for using communications media technology as provided by Section 120.54, Paragraph 5B2 Florida statutes. This meeting is being streamed on YouTube Live and on the city's Facebook page. The agenda and backup material in the agenda packet are posted on the city's website. Members of the public wanting to participate in the meeting were asked in the posted meeting notice to submit their questions or comments on agenda items with their name and address and a reference to the agenda item on which they wish to comment by email to the city clerk at cityclerks@gulfbreezeflorida.gov or by regular mail to the city clerk's attention at the City of Gulf Breeze, City Hall, 1070 Shoreline Drive, Gulf Breeze, Florida, 32561. All written comments for this meeting had to be received by 2 p.m. Central Standard Time today, August 3, 2020. Anyone who wants to comment on an agenda item during the meeting or anyone who wants to participate in the public forum at the end of the meeting can call in to the following toll-free number, 1-888-585-9008, call code 1-866-319-955. If you will hold, your call will be answered in turn. Comments on agenda items and in the public forum may also be made via the chat box on YouTube Live. The standard meeting rules continue to apply. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and must be applicable to the agenda topic being considered or made during the public forum. Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, I believe we'll go back to where I interrupted myself. All right, in the regular meeting minutes, I believe we had a motion and a second. No discussion, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Thank you. Next, we'll call for the approval of the July 30th, 2020 special meeting minutes. Again, Leslie, do we have any public comments?
No, ma'am, we sure.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
A second?
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Council, any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, the same sign. Thank you. First on our agenda tonight, we have a very special person here that is my pleasure to introduce, and it is Senator Tdac Budget. Several of you, or many of you out there, as well as in here, have probably heard about the program that he is sponsoring and going door to door basically to promote. And it's as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and an increased need for blood and blood plasma. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Senator Broxton and let him tell us all about it.
Thank you, Mayor, and it's an honor to be here. This is my hometown, and I don't get to be here very much, but I have visited all the other counties, the 3 I represent, the governmental bodies. And really what I want to do is have a conversation about what I think is going on. We know that we're in a horrific time. By the end of this week, if trends continue, Florida will surpass 500,000 certified people that have had COVID. What you don't hear in the news is that probably 475,000 of those will survive. And when they survive, really a miracle happens. They become an advocate for the people that are in harm's way, because resident in their blood is a plasma, convalescent plasma, that has proven to be the most effective treatment for those that have had the adverse impact of this virus. The challenge is, how do we voluntarily, in a free society, get people to come forward and say, I'm willing to give my blood? Not just give blood in the usual way, which I did a couple weeks ago, but my son Jason had COVID-19. Thank the Lord, he was fairly asymptomatic. But last week we went down to MediaCom to One Blood, and he gave his plasma. Now they'll be able to harvest from his antibodies, enough plasma, enough convalescent plasma to treat 4 people. So here's our challenge. We all want to keep the economy going. We know this disease is not going to kill all of us, but it is going to kill people that we love. And most of those people are over 65. It doesn't mean anything to you that a person's over 65 in most cases, unless they're your mother or father or uncle or aunt. And then, like the family 2 weeks ago that their dad got COVID-19, the only thing that saved him was convalescent plasma. And they were begging, literally begging people to give. I just left West Florida where we had a drive, and they had a doctor who had overcome COVID-19 talking about his experience, and he was giving his plasma. We put the hospitals in a horrible situation in that we did not have enough plasma antibodies to make a choice of everyone getting it. So who makes that choice? If it's your mother or your father, or you've been in you've come across an illness or had cancer where all of your antibodies are low, a third party is going to make that decision of whether you survive or not. If we had an abundance, and thankfully today we have more plasma. There was a 500% spike increase 3 weeks ago for this plasma. Now we've seen a response from the public where we have enough to deal with the critically ill. You're going to see we're in a much different place than we were 3 months ago. We know a lot more, but the treatment has gotten better and better. Today they announced a new treatment that may have a dramatic effect on the people that are on ventilators. We're going to get better and better. And I think the advice to the older people is just stay safe, stay home, and we'll have treatment for you, but don't expose yourself now because it could be catastrophic. But what I'm asking you to do is do something that's safe. Giving blood is one of the safest things that you can do. And I know you've already filled up the bus that's coming over here, and that's a great, I'm so proud to hear that. But make a commitment as a leader, as someone that the people have elected you to lead, not to talk about what you've done, good decisions you've made, but this would be the first time in your life as a politician that you get to literally give blood to your constituents to save their life. How many people can say, I've saved someone's life? You can now by giving blood. And it may be that you already have the antibody. If you do, that's even better. So I'm asking that we have plenty of these pledges. We have them online. It simply says, every 60 days until this pandemic is over, I will give blood and I will help. And if we do that as a community, and we've had tremendous response. West Florida just told me that their need is going down. But what we're going to need to do is that, and we're going to see this as the tests get better, when we know within the first day if a person has the virus, rather than waiting 7 or 10 days, we will begin to treat the elderly the first day that they show a sign. Once the disease develops in your system, it gets to a point of no return. So as we move forward, and we all do this as a community in supporting the health needs of other people, the Bible says no greater love a man has than to give his life for someone else. It also says that blood is the lifeblood of who we are. So I'm asking you, I'm going to leave these for you, and I'd be glad to ask any questions about things that maybe are happening at the state level, how the governor has already addressed this need in Orlando last week. And I want my hometown, my home area, to be supportive of doing what others are doing around the state. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Do any of you have any questions, Senator Broxton? I think this is an amazing thing you're doing, and the amount of success you've had with it in such a short time is wonderful. And since you are a hometown guy, you know that Gulf Breeze always steps up and steps forward when there's a need. And I think Thursday we're already filled, and we are scheduling a second return.
Wow.
So thank you. Your personal presence always makes a difference. So thank you for coming to our meeting tonight.
Thank
and
you.
we look forward to having 2 or 3 times.
Well, let's do it. Thank you
All
very
right.
much. You'll have a
Okay,
good day.
thank you.
God bless you all.
All right, at this time, we will go to resolutions. And our first resolution is number 39/2020, and that's the budget amendment number 3 for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020.
Jean, would you mind? We've had one minor change from what was on the agenda. There was one item we had to take off. So this amendment is primarily things that have occurred since the last amendment for the second quarter. The total amount of the change is $961,481 with this amendment, bringing the total overall 2.254119. Some of the matters addressed here we had approved at the, I believe it was in June, to do a lot of repairs to pump replacements. So this is, as we talked a little bit in the budget workshop, the tap fee revenues can be used for operations. And so this is to budget some of the tap fee revenue that has been received. In addition, some other matters that have happened this year, the centrifuge broke down at the wastewater treatment plant, and they had to do some emergency hauling. And there was an algae bloom issue out there too. So some of those costs, and the cost for chemicals, I can't even talk, made that change necessary. How about that? And then the other primary thing in here is with the COVID event, the revenues in the tourism fund have gone down, and some of those items that we used the money for were related to keeping the maintenance up on the multi-use purpose field and the splash pad water, and since we're not using those facilities and the revenues are down, we reduced the amount of transfers from the tourism fund to the general fund this year. So that's primarily that.
All right, thank you. Leslie, have we had any comments or questions regarding this?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for approval and then a second. Any council discussion, questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. All right, next we will be going to resolution number 40-2020, and that's extending the amended resolution 35-2020 as extended by prior resolutions, declaring state of emergency to implement protective measures related to COVID-19 and face coverings. All right, Samantha, I think you have information for us regarding that.
Just your biweekly update that you have in front of you. Inside the city limits, we currently, as of today's count, have 32 positive cases. Additionally, the report from Baptist Hospital System is that the numbers are stable at Gulf Breeze Hospital. They have decreased slightly at the larger Baptist Hospital. At the larger hospital system, they are at 57 positive inpatients today.
Okay, all right, thank you. Leslie, do we have any comments or communications regarding this?
I've not received any emails or any correspondence, and I do not have anything online.
Okay. All right, council, do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Okay, second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? And this would be to continue it until our next meeting. Right, next regularly scheduled meeting. All right, hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No. No.
Okay, passes, did you vote, Tom?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Passes 3-2. All right, now we will move on to our consent agenda items, and, Leslie, comments or questions?
No, ma'am, I've not received any.
All right, do we have a motion?
Move for approval, items Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, when we have a second, any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to action items, and that is the designation of a voting delegate to the Florida League of Cities annual business meeting. Samantha.
Thank you. I'm going to ask our city clerk, Ms. Prizer, but ask if she will talk about this briefly. I'm sure the council will remember looking at it last year, but I think she's had her finger more in touch with just conversations related to this year's conference.
All right.
Questions?
Yeah, absolutely. We received an email in our packet for our voting delegate. Each year, the bylaws state through the 4 League of Cities that they have to have one representative from each city on the voting delegate. And so each year, we bring this to the council and ask them to designate our voting delegate to vote on behalf of the city. Essentially, other cities within the state can submit resolutions on various different things. Those resolutions then go to their resolutions committee. And the resolutions committee then turns around and they vet all of the resolutions and things that they receive. And then they vote on those. And if those pass through the resolution committee, then they go to the voting delegate as a whole. And that is the annual business meeting. And normally this is held in Orlando every August. And, they have various workshops, but due to the COVID-19, they have decided not to do that this year, that they're only gonna have the resolutions committee. It'll meet on, I wanna say a Thursday, and then the voting delegates will hold a virtual meeting on that Friday. And so that will be the only things that they'll do this year. So everything is just gonna, they'll go through it and the delegates will vote that way.
Okay.
And so there will be no, attendance anywhere. In past years, normally the mayor has been the delegate on behalf of the city. Usually the mayor does go to the conferences. We have had other council go as well. But we always bring it to the council, for the council to do that, to make their appointment and do it that way, so.
thank you. Do we have any public questions or comments?
No, ma'am, I've never seen any.
Okay, all right, do we have nomination, I guess, would be the thing to say here.
I would like to hear what the mayor would like to do.
I'm perfectly happy to do that, and I'll represent the council, and if anyone else would like to, I've done it once, so I'm good with that.
You did it so well.
Thank you very much.
I'll second that.
All right, so I guess there's a motion and a second that the mayor be the designated person, so any discussion on that?
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, same sign. Thank you, passes 5-0. All right, next we are going to the comprehensive plan amendment. Samantha?
Thank you. Mayor and council, every 8 years, a local government, be it city or county, is required to go through an evaluation and appraisal report process of its comprehensive plan. It's what we call the EAR for short. And it is typically a very laborious process. The comprehensive plan has each chapter by state statute is called an element, and it is what establishes your levels of service, both as required by mandates from the state government and then also those levels of service that you set yourself for your citizenry. And so as you from time to time may look at your official zoning map, your zoning map has to comply with your comprehensive plan. And in fact, as we talk about your multi-mobility and transportation improvements, we are talking about portions of your comprehensive plan to implement. It is required by state law that you have a comprehensive plan. Because the city is built out, the comprehensive plan isn't something that you see routinely on your agenda. That's not typical. Most cities, if you're growing, you're discussing your comprehensive plan pretty routinely. And so we, in the city, could go a number of years before an item like this makes it on the agenda. The state reviewed our initial response to the evaluation and appraisal report process and said we were not in compliance as it related to one aspect, and that is Mary Jenkins. That's pretty
very
good. Usually it is.
Not
It's
the other one.
that's right. That is. And so, in looking obviously at what this topic relates to, it does relate to floodplain management. And so, Shane, in review, it really ensures that our data and analysis is current. And so he reached out to Dewberry Engineering, who is one of our 2 master services engineers and consultants. They have a lot of experience. You see that the total cost is $8,500 that we propose to split between 2 departments. This is required, and so we need to move forward with that process, and staff would ask for approval.
Okay, all right, thank you. Leslie?
I have no name, not
All
received
right.
any.
Excuse me, council, do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
All right, and a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions about this item? All right, all in favor of authorizing the task order in the amount of $8,500 for Dewberry Engineering, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, same sign. All right, passes 5-0. Our next item is action item C, and that's the natural gas pipeline relocation change order.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In the review of this memorandum, you have read the words of Thomas Lambert, who is on the line if we have any questions of him. But essentially, when the project was first bid out, we did not realize some of the issues we would encounter subsurface. The contractor encountered a large volume of buried rock, rubble, and an abandoned cast iron water main. These conditions definitely required more additional time. We do feel that the request for a change order is fair given the unexpected expense. So staff is recommending that the council approve the change orders totaling $28,727 to utility services company for unknown conditions discovered during the construction of the natural gas pipeline relocation. And we do find that without incurring significant cost, these change orders would have been unavoidable.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. I remember we've talked about this on and off
Yes.
for quite some time.
Yeah.
All right, Leslie,
No, ma'am, I've not received any.
all right, do we have a motion
Move to approve.
and a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion?
So has the work already been done?
It is, it's complete.
So we don't really have a choice, do we?
Well, because we were under a deadline with FDOT, either way you look, yeah, we didn't, it was within their right of way.
Utility service company's been a long-term
Yeah.
partner of the city, so I trust their
Yeah.
Okay. Just curious of the timeline.
Did you say you are curious about
I
that?
thought we were just curious about the
Oh, okay.
timeline.
Yeah, he's right.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, hearing none, passes 5-0. And action item D is a request for additional fees for construction observation. Samantha.
Yes, thank you. Again, there's more thorough explanation in your memorandum, but this is a request for additional fees in the amount of $12,500 by
To
McKim and
begin
Creed.
recording this conference, press 1. To quit, please wait or press star.
Sorry, I don't know why I did that.
You must have took longer than 3 minutes.
And so, in this instance, the city and the engineer initially negotiated the fee in
Command
27.
canceled.
At least it's not my voice we're listening to.
It sounded like you for some reason.
It did a little bit, but that's why I paused at first. When Bluetooth does that to me in the car, it just totally.
I haven't touched the thing, that's what's
I know
scary.
you haven't.
Oh, well, okay, sorry about that.
Okay.
So there's about 45% of the project that's left to be completed, and there's an additional $12,500 that is considered reasonable to maintain the same level of service to the city. As we've talked about in the past, this is certainly one of the largest projects of its kind that we have ever done in the history of the city, and so we have relied very heavily on the engineer as things have come up that we did not anticipate. And again, you're talking about utilities that are quite old, but also utilities that don't belong to us. Significantly, AT&T did not identify the majority of the utilities that they had in the field. We also had utilities that, because we didn't have GIS back when some of the things were put under the road, that have just caused some in the field redesigns. And you have a contractor who is giving us advice based on his good faith, but we really need that independent engineer to say, well, yes, you could do it this way, but it could compromise other aspects of the project. And that's where we've really relied on McKim and Creed. And so for that reason, staff is recommending approval of the additional fees, which again, considering the total $2.2 million construction cost, we think is very reasonable.
All right, thank you. Leslie?
No, ma'am, I've not received any comments.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion
Move for approval.
and a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments from council?
A question. The engineer that the city has on staff that's out there overlooking the job, does he not participate in this part? I mean, I see him out there quite a lot. My mind is going to blank on his name, the gentleman that.
Clifton Wells.
Clifton Wells.
He is a certified project manager, but he's not an engineer.
Okay, so the engineer has to come up with an alternate plan or something when they come across something that wasn't originally discovered.
Correct. It goes back to accountability. If something goes wrong, Clifton is there to make sure that it's done as the plan proposes. But if the plan is wrong, we have to have somebody to go after, and that's that stamp and seal.
And it appears to be moving along well,
It is.
from
It
what I
is.
see.
Yes, yes, it's
Okay,
definitely.
and I know Clifton's been out there.
It's
seen
ahead of
it
schedule.
quite a few times out
Yes.
there constantly, so, okay.
Yes.
Just curious.
Yep.
So the original bid was from 2017 that they anticipated, so in other words, they have a kind of an open door to, if they come into unforeseen things that for extra time
Well, we
necessary.
could say tough noogies, but if we were to just say, look, what we negotiated in 2017 is what it is.
Is that a legal term?
Oh, yes.
She's like,
The issue is that we recognize that there were utilities that were supposed to have been identified that weren't, and we also anticipate the likelihood that because there's 45% of the project still left, it could happen again, and we don't want it to be our staff, Clifton, who's out there making a decision. We want that accountability of it being stamped and sealed design, so.
okay,
So-
just curious.
Yeah, it's money you spend now so that later if something does go wrong, we're holding somebody accountable.
Okay, any further discussion, questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. All right, next we're down to our discussion items. Do we have any items to discuss?
No.
All right, any from the council?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I do. I knew I did. It's our schedule. I look at the
Yes,
city
yes.
clerk.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And so I'm gonna segue and then Leslie will interrupt me. But today, Jean and Leslie talked about the schedule for when we have to hold our hearings for adoption of the budget. And unfortunately, it does not coincide with our regularly scheduled meetings. But September isn't going to be typical anyway. So here is what we would propose. September 7th would be your typical meeting date, but because of Labor Day, you're not meeting the 7th, you would meet the 9th, which is a Wednesday instead. And so you have to adopt the budget. Is that first reading or second?
That is, the 9th will be the tentative, so that'll be the first reading on the 9th.
And then the final is the 14th?
Yes, we will need to hold a special meeting on the 14th of September. The way that the statute reads is, the advertisement has to be done within 15 days of the first hearing. So our advertisement will go in the paper on the 10th. And you cannot, the public hearing and the second public hearing and to set the budget and the millage has to be done no less than 2 days from the advertisement date and no more than 5 days. And so we can't do it on the 15th because the Santa Rosa County School Board has first preference. So the 14th is day number 4. And so we pretty much are in a spot where we have no choice but to meet.
And have we set a time for it?
It would be 5:30.
Okay.
So the 9th and the 14th, 5:30.
Yes, sir. But I think Samantha had.
Yes, and so because you're having meetings back to back, what I would propose is that the council also approve canceling your meeting scheduled for September 21st. And we can just move everything forward so that if you're already meeting on the 14th, you meet for regular business agenda items as well. So the only 2 meetings you would then have in September are the 9th and the 14th.
Okay. Does that sound agreeable to
I
everyone?
second that.
We knew we better come up with something.
Let's talk about it.
The county called us last week, and so we sat together and came up with a plan.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Was there any other thing we needed to go over about the SSRU meeting next week? Anything present to them?
About just on the SSRU agenda, Jason is working on that now for us to get with you individually. But we had to work on the budget workshop, so he turned his attention to that really today, other than the items you and he had already discussed. On August 17th, the only budget item we have left to discuss, you had a budget workshop also scheduled for the 17th. But what I would propose is just at your regular meeting under discussion, the only thing I have left to present to you is the Tdac budget. But the Tourism Development Council is meeting this week, and that's why you didn't review that today. It's a very short budget. It is not worth a special meeting. I mean, you know, it's short. It's, obviously tourism has taken a hard hit. So if there's anything from your prior two budget workshops that you would also like to discuss, if you can just as you did since the last workshop you got with me before the meeting today, if you'll let me know and we can add that as discussion, like for follow-up. But what I would propose on the 17th is we meet at our regular meeting time at 5:30, and that the Tdac go on the discussion agenda, as well as anything else that you would have me research or look into between now and then. And then
You're talking about
of August.
I'm sorry.
Of August.
I'm like, wait a minute, you just gave us off the rest.
She's tricky down there. Right. On August 17th. So
Okay.
5:30,
right at 5:30.
regular meeting and a little bit of a budget
That's it.
follow-up.
That's right.
Okay.
And then again, to just recap, and then in September you would meet on the 9th to approve the tentative budget. You looked at the tentative budget summary tonight, and then on the 14th for final adoption.
Okay. Sound good, everyone? And we don't vote on this.
No, I just wanted to make sure. If you're good with that, then the city clerk can advertise it.
All right? All good.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds fine. And then, new business? Any new business? All right. Hearing none, public forum?
I have not received any emails or mail, and I do not have any phone calls or any comments on YouTube Live.
All right. Okay, and with that then, we'll close the meeting. and-
Council comments?
Oh, council comments. JB. I can tell you have something.
You know, my only comment on this budget workshop today, I know that with the police department, they were the only ones that mentioned new vehicles. Nobody mentioned any new vehicles, no street sweepers, nothing was mentioned in any of these budgets. Is there gonna be some surprises, or is there no vehicles or anything planned in any of this?
So if you look under your, budget narratives where they,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's more drilled down in there, but,
We're through.
I know,
Yeah.
that's like they talked about that, so,
Yeah.
you know.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because last Sunday I went to church on the beach, and they had that street sweeper was going down the beach. And behind it was the trail, the dirtiest looking part of the street you ever seen, and in front of it looked so clean. It's like, you gotta be kidding me, that thing was making more of a mess than anything. But that was on the beach, and it made me think of last year's budget with the street sweeper.
well, this year, because of COVID, our forecasts for next year are, anemic.
Okay.
And so that is not to say that we don't have capital requests, but they are, what you heard repeatedly was a maintenance level budget.
Right.
And so please do review the narrative, which we
Okay.
went much more in detail, and then the budget report is what the budget will be, unless you have given us direction. So Jean has an Excel right now where she has, some changes based on y'all's discussions, and I can email that out to you so that, just verify that we captured everything you've said so far. Any, other questions related to the budget reports, please get with me, but they are all maintenance level budgets, and I just heard the same from the senator, they just are projecting next year is gonna be tough. So there's no street
Specific
sweeper.
wish list thing with a bunch of things
Okay.
like
Well,
that.
there is no street sweeper. This year, in the Parks and Rec, the people mover, I mean, those kinds of things, we would not put that in a budget next year when, right now, we're essentially manned and we have employees on furlough. So there are capital needs, there are essential capital needs, but they're in your budget report.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems like we already voted down the street sweeper anyway.
Yeah,
I was using
I
it
got
as
the
a-
message. Yeah, we got the message on that.
All right, let's see, Randy?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, Todd?
I appreciate all the work on the budget. It's a huge process, I know. I'd like to get us to a point at some time where we really evaluate and say, here's the roll-up of everyone's budget. What would it take to get to a whole instead of plus 5.5? And those are the kind of things that in business that we're tasked with all the time. And it's not so much that we implement it, but that we have that as a contingency plan to say, if things get tight, here are the places we're going to cut, or here are the places that we're going to do without. So that if things change in our environment that affects our revenues to that point, that we're ready to go, and that we don't have crisis on our hands, or that we don't just keep spending money that is not coming in as we thought it would. So that's where I'd like to see us go.
I'm not able to get there. The challenge I have with, is that our budget, a roll-up budget, is representative of both the general fund and the enterprises. And so when you say plus 5%, that's plus 5, we have 22% growth rate in the last 10 years. And so unless we were to sell off the South Santa Rosa utility, that's why you're seeing the increase. You're seeing the increase in operating because you're seeing the increase. And so the problem with rolling up enterprises into the general fund is it distorts the whole picture. And that's why we have to compartmentalize and take each chapter. You had Mr. Noah Berry who would come year after year and say, you know, you have a $30 million budget. I remember back when it was 10. And I'm sure we all remember Mr. Berry saying those words. Well, when he's referring to 10, he's referring to when we only provided services inside the city. So it's very important to look at the general fund separately from the enterprises, because that plus 5% is because of paving, and it is because of an increase in contractual services with the South Santa Rosa utility. That growth, more customers, more revenue, more expenses. So I just share it. It is very distorted to just give a number and say we need to trim from that number. You really do have to look at the summary budget, and as you asked me, Councilman Torgerson, well, what is that number without capital? That will show you a more reflective number of operating. Well, what is it without the internal transfers? If we're not subsidizing anything, what's the performance of each fund? That is the question to ask. But when you roll them all together, it honestly tells you very little. It does, because if you look at your general fund with tourism and CRA and red light, and what does all that together mean? To us, it just shows, the total performance, but it isn't very reflective of whether we are a fine-tuned, efficient machine or not.
Yeah, and I get that. I think when I hear JD and Randy's comments, that's really strikes the heart of it. That says, okay, so for Parks and Rec, we're getting two new vehicles plus a gator and those kind of things. Are those things that are critical to the success of that department? And that's where I think at some point we just need to be ready to say this we can or can't do without. I'm not saying from my view that we should cut the budget from what has been presented at this point, but I do think in terms of contingency planning it would be appropriate to do so, to have a plan B.
And I know I seem argumentative, but I showed y'all at budget tonight, a summary that showed negative cash flow for 3 out of 5 of your major funds. So what are we talking about? You have negative cash flow at the end of the year. So, when we're talking about Parks and Recreation, which is in the general fund, you're talking about the replacement of 2 maintenance vehicles for cutting grass. And Councilman Schluter's question is, well, can we contract it out and save money? That's the right question to ask. Let's compare our business model. But when you're talking about your enterprises and 3 out of 5 have a negative cash flow at the end of the year, by cutting from the bottom, that is how we got into the deferred capital situation that we are year after year, where now we're having to pay more money with all of these emergency repairs.
And therefore it would survive the test.
Yes. So somehow I have challenged myself personally this year with trying to teach our budget in such a way that our citizens understand it. That just because it's a growing number does not mean that we're spending more. It means that our business enterprises are growing because our population is growing. And I just have to figure out how to do it in 30 words or less.
We'll start playing back your voice to you.
I can't figure out how to do it concisely.
It'll take 3 minutes.
Well,
I'm gonna work on it.
I think what Todd's saying, though, it was like last year, a month after we approved the budget, they came to us, hey, we need a $60,000 wood chipper. We're like, where was this and why wasn't this in the budget? That's the kind of thing that, they hit you in a kind of like, what? You need a $60,000 wood chipper, and you know, I'm just using that as an example, you know, that, so hopefully they foresee those kind of needs.
I will say, in the narrative, what we have done, to your point, Councilman Schluter, is that now we don't just put in there the list of what the fund can afford and what we're asking for, but we're also listing out all the unfunded projects so that you can see those things from the capital plan that we know we need, but the budget just isn't going to afford it. And the wood chipper would be an example of that. Now, when you go and fund 401 and 403, at the very end, you'll see a list of unfunded projects, but at least you know, this is what staff are anticipating is coming down the road. So we are trying to get better and better every year, and we're hearing that you don't like surprises.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I feel a lot better about where we are this time than I did last time, because I'm more educated on it.
I think what might help citizens a little bit to understand is the fact that the monies that fund these projects specifically have strings attached that are specific to the CRA, Red Light District, wherever the money is coming from. And what they may see is, well, we're spending all this money to do a beautification project on the street. Why aren't we using it for something more tangible like the police department? Well, they need to be more educated. I needed to be educated to understand that, because they just see the big pot, like you said, Noah Barrett's there, $30 million budget, and we have all these issues. Why is that problem? And these funds are specific, and the money that we get from somebody that may have gifted the city so much money specifically for beautification or something like that. They don't realize that. And I think once they understand that a little bit, it might be, oh, okay, it has to be used specifically for that intended purpose. It's not just throw it in the pot and we just divvy it all up. It's not that we get that opportunity to do that. I think that would help a little bit.
I
for
agree.
people to understand, and the business aspect side of the city owning its own utility system, and the growth that's going on in South Santa Rosa County right now is just phenomenal, and looks like it's going to continue. So obviously that number is going to continue to keep getting bigger and bigger because of the budget that's going to require for the infrastructure and whatever goes in play for all that. So that needs to be kind of like, this is an investment business that the city owns, this portion of it, but the city itself is still that little small pie that we've been dealing with for many, many years. What's growing is out here, and what's out there can potentially help us at some point in time. I don't know, just
Yeah.
food for thought.
Well, I appreciate that, and as I said, it's a challenge, for me, and so I'm going to be trying some different things, some graphics, some mail outs. Even the budget and brief, I think, is not where we need to be, because I don't think, to your point, I don't think it expresses that. So we're going to really try to explain that very easily to our citizenry.
Well, I think you started, I thought that first article that you did for the Gulf Breeze News, that kind of set the stage and tried to say general versus earmarked, and I thought that was clear. And it's probably just gonna take, a long time. I feel like I understand it better this year because of the approach that we've taken and looking at enterprises and understanding that it's like independent little businesses. So, I think it's a great plan, and I do think it's important too, because it just sounds like we have a lot of money, but the reality is it is budgeted and it is well spent. Tom?
I had this really great point I was gonna make, and I forgot what.
Oh, no.
With the Alpha Bravo.